By the blessed name of Allah, the most merciful, the very gracious. So, how does a massive pop song completely vanish from the internet? Picture this. A guy remembers a hit song from the 90s. He can hum every single note. He can sing literally every word. He knows the chorus is this huge, sweeping thing, and the verses are fast and clever. It's been stuck in his head for 20 years. But when he types this single line into Google, absolutely nothing. The internet, the place that supposedly holds every piece of music ever made, insists this song just never existed. That right there is the beginning of the deepest, strangest mystery I've ever chased. And the craziest part? It's all entirely true.
Now, I'm the kind of person whose brain just doesn't let go of things. A therapist actually once told me I have a form of OCD, not the visible, hand-washing kind that you usually think of, but something known as pure O. It's where the compulsions happen completely silently, right inside your head. You're constantly checking memories, repeating words, endlessly digging for answers you just can't find. Researchers will tell you those hidden rituals are still very real compulsions. They're just invisible to everyone else. And honestly, for me, that diagnosis explained absolutely everything.
To give you an idea, once, I just couldn't remember the name of this sci-fi book I'd read as a kid. My brain absolutely locked onto it, and I spent an entire day relentlessly chasing the memory until I finally pulled it out. It was The Ear, the Eye, and the Arm, a real novel set in a futuristic Zimbabwe. That's just how my head works. So when a filmmaker named Tyler Gillette emailed me, saying he was basically being tortured by a song that had seemingly vanished from the earth, I knew exactly what he was feeling. Let's dive into Tyler's story. He lives out in Los Angeles. One night, he and his wife were driving home from a holiday dinner. He'd had a couple of drinks, his wife was driving, thankfully, and he just casually starts singing a pop tune from his teenage years back in Arizona. His wife looks at him and goes, "What on earth is that?" Tyler is completely shocked. He says, "You don't know this song? It was huge in the 90s. So he grabs his phone to prove it, ready to play it on the car speakers. And guys, that was the moment the world just kind of cracked open. He couldn't find a single lyric. Not the artist, not the title, not even a whisper of it. For 15 solid minutes, he just sat there in the passenger seat, frantically scrolling. When they finally got home, his wife went to bed. But Tyler, he stayed awake for 3.5 hours hitting dead end after dead end. He later said it felt like finding a literal glitch in reality, like he'd stumbled into a hole in the world. The wild part is, Tyler remembered this song with ridiculous clarity. The verses had this rapid, almost rapping delivery. Think of the band Bare Naked Ladies and their hit 1 Week. And then the chorus swelled into this massive U2 style stadium sound, full of shimmering guitars and just a big open heart. There was even a flute playing the intro going, do 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 do. I mean, he had the whole thing mapped out. And the lyrics? They were essentially this long list of boasts. He remembered lines like, better than the motto and the G-string, better than the promise of a good one-night fling, the daughter of a sultan for a bride, and better than the cherry on a whipped cream sundae. And then the chorus passionately cried out, share your love with me tonight, I want to feel that love. Now, I need to be honest here for a second. Those words are exactly the kind of bragging that completely filled late 90s radio. Sure, they sound fun, but they also point to something kind of hollow, Fleeting thrills, immodesty, this version of love that demands everything right now but offers absolutely nothing lasting in return. Real love isn't a one-night fling. It's commitment, it's sacrifice, it's building a life together. But back then, it was just a super catchy tune on the radio, and Tyler literally could not get it out of his skull. So, what happens when he searches those lyrics? Well, Google did something almost comical. Because the algorithm took the words so literally, it just showed him pictures of actual sultans and royal brides. The song simply wasn't in any database anywhere. Now, Tyler is a filmmaker. He's not a musician, but he was so obsessed he opened up his editing software and recorded the entire song just using his mouth. He literally became the drums, the bass, the guitars, the flute, every single part, all layered together in this weird, passionate a cappella track. Then he played it into an app called SoundHound, which claims it can identify a melody even if you just hum it. But the app? It heard absolutely nothing. The song had 0 digital fingerprint. It turns out, computers can really only find what humans have already fed into them.
But Tyler did eventually find one tiny breadcrumb. Deep on a guitar forum called Strat Talk, a user going by the name Piezo Man, who was posting all the way from Trinidad and Tobago, had actually posted those exact same few lyrics, and had even recorded the flute intro on his guitar. That was a game changer. It meant this wasn't just some weird regional hit in Arizona. It had somehow crossed an ocean. But of course, no one could actually reach Piezo Man to ask him about it.
At this point in the explainer, things get pretty extreme. I decided to fly out to Los Angeles, rent a legendary studio, and literally rebuild this ghost of a song straight from Tyler's memory. We walked into United Recording. This is the exact same room where Frank Sinatra sang, where Michael Jackson's Thriller was mixed. The walls are literally lined with gold records. We had 4 professional musicians waiting for us, and honestly, I was absolutely terrified that this whole thing was going to be a massive disaster. But then, Tyler just completely transformed. He stepped up and became this incredibly confident music director. He was telling the drummer exactly what to play, asking the guitarist for more shimmer, and guiding the singer through every strange lyrical leap. He even remembered a highly specific 17-second guitar solo that he hadn't heard in 2 decades. His wife actually drove over to watch the process, and he just stood there, clutching his hair, laughing in pure joy as it came to life. See, it wasn't a false memory at all. It was a full, vivid recording locked inside his head. This happens through a process scientists call synaptic tagging. Basically, your brain puts a chemical flag on an experience, and if it matters enough to you, proteins actually cement it into a lasting memory. Tyler's flag had clearly never faded. So we finally played our finished studio track back into SoundHound, and still nothing. So I decided to take our recording to the people who really should know. I played it for 5 senior editors at Rolling Stone magazine. We're talking about over 100 years of combined pop music writing experience sitting right there in that room. And not a single one of them recognized it. Their best guess? They thought it was a hoax. They figured Tyler must just be lying. I even called up legendary critics, people known as human encyclopedias of 90s pop, and they all just laughed in disbelief. One of them actually said, "I would bet a toe it's from 1997 to 1999, but I've never heard it. Your punishment is walking door to door with a ukulele." I was literally losing my mind. The song was now completely stuck in my head too, looping for hours at 3 a.m. The musicians I'd hired were texting me saying they couldn't sleep either. This mystery had officially become contagious. Desperate for answers, I called up Stephen Page, the former frontman of Bare Naked Ladies. While he didn't know the song himself, he gave me the first real explanation. He told me that between 1998 and 2000, the music industry was just swimming in so much cash that record labels treated bands like penny stocks. It was wild. They would sign hundreds of acts, push a single out to a few test radio markets, and if it didn't explode instantly, they'd just drop the artist and erase everything. No album, no promotion, no internet trace left behind. Stephen called it a bubble. He said it was literally a casino. What that meant was Tyler could have easily heard the song dozens of times on the radio in Flagstaff, Arizona, while the rest of the world never even got a chance to. Still, I had to be absolutely sure. So I played the track for Susan Rogers. She's a brilliant neuroscientist who actually used to be Prince's audio engineer. She didn't recognize it either, but she offered a totally different theory: false memory. She thought Tyler might have fused 2 old songs together in his head, which is a phenomenon called cryptomnesia. To explain it, she told this amazing story about Crosby, Stills, and Nash supposedly writing a song in the studio, only for her to have to tell them it was actually already playing on the radio. Now the truth is, that particular song, Love Don't Live Here Anymore, was a hit for the group Rolls Royce years earlier, so she may have slightly misremembered the details herself, but her central point was incredibly valid. The human brain can absolutely mistake an old memory for a brand new creation. Yet Tyler's memory had managed to produce an entire, completely coherent song. And besides, that Piezo Man post from Trinidad, that completely shattered the false memory idea. Something very real was out there. And then I noticed this tiny, almost invisible detail in that old forum post. Pizzo Man mentioned he had also asked about the song over on Facebook. Now nobody, not Tyler, not me, not any of the critics, had even thought to search Facebook, so I typed the lyrics in. Instantly, a post popped up from a man in the Philippines who had written down the full lyrics, and right there at the bottom there was a comment with a name, Evan Scott Olson. I tracked him down, gave him a call, and played the recording we'd made in LA. He just listened and said, "Well man, I thought everyone forgot about that song."
And turns out, Evan Olson was a musician from Greensboro, North Carolina. He had recorded this song, which was actually called So Much Better, entirely by himself in his bedroom. He used to burn it onto cheap CDs and hand them out at his shows. Well, one of those CDs eventually reached Universal Music, literally the biggest label on earth. Next thing you know, a Lincoln Town Car pulls up to his house. He's flown first class, put up in a giant suite, and served coconut ice cream in martini glasses by the legendary executive Doug Morris. They signed him right on the spot. But then, the corporate machine did what it did best. Absolutely nothing. They never re-recorded the song with a full band. They pushed it to a few radio stations, watched the numbers, and when it didn't stick immediately, they dropped him. No national tour, no internet legacy. Evan was so desperate he even sent his own money to a friend in New York, begging him to buy fistfuls of his CDs from a Virgin megastore just to try and keep the dream alive. But it wasn't enough. The song died. Evan went back home to North Carolina, went back to playing small local gigs, and started writing music for television. He felt pretty guilty at the time, thinking he'd somehow disappointed the label. But looking back on it now, he realized he'd found something way more solid than fame. He found an honest, creative life close to home.
So I sent Evan's real, original recording of So Much Better over to Tyler. He put his headphones on and he told me his heart just started pounding. "Wow," he said, "that's a great song." When the singer from our studio band heard it, he couldn't believe how perfectly Tyler had reconstructed it from memory alone. All the layers, the flute, the shimmering guitars, it was all right there. Tyler was so thrilled he planned to fly out to North Carolina just to watch Evan play live. And he made a promise to type those lyrics into the internet himself so that no one would ever again fall into that glitch, that hole in the world.
You know, this explainer isn't really just about a forgotten pop song. It's about what happens when the truth is totally invisible to every single tool we trust. Google failed, the apps failed, the experts failed, and so many of them were just incredibly quick to declare the whole thing a complete lie. But truth doesn't actually depend on what the crowd can see. Truth waits, solid and patient, until someone looks in the right place. It's also about what really lasts in this world. Remember, the song bragged about being better than a fleeting night, better than a model, better than a rich bride. Yet the man who actually wrote it found his deepest satisfaction not in the flashy flash of a record deal, but in a steady, quiet life of making music and being present for the people he loved. And Tyler, for all of his wild obsession, made sure to drive his wife to the studio to witness the moment, because the memories that mattered the most weren't just the songs, they were the people he shared them with. Also, just a vital word of care here. This whole story begins with a man who had been drinking and then got into a car. The safest roads are built by those who stay clear-minded and protect the lives around them. And the love that truly fills a heart is never the kind that treats another person as a trophy. It's the kind that stays, that sacrifices, and builds something that vastly outlasts any radio chart. In the end, the missing hit was finally found. But the deeper, much more important thing we recovered was this. Your memory is actually more powerful than any search engine. A committed heart beats way longer than a radio single, and the truth, no matter how deeply it might be buried, will always surface for those who refuse to stop seeking. So I have to ask you, what truth will surface for you if you refuse to stop seeking?